been a mess. It's unbelievable. I figured I've got 80 hours of actual machine time on it. Forget about everything else that I have to do.
Yeah.
And I'm also struggling, as always, with figuring out good ways to hold things down.
Now they're round or they square?
They'll be fair. I'm trying to make 16 at a time.
Yeah.
Just
Actually, well, to me, the easiest thing to do would be to do all of the cutting, lasering before you break it down into the 16 coasters.
yeah. Well, the trouble is I have the male part I have to make, okay, and
Huh?
the male part has to go in the opposite direction than of wood than the female part. I had to, so I've cut all the females 16 at a time, 4 boards. Now I've cut all the males and they're perpendicular, so I have to cut them apart. And then I've tried to do it double-sided so I didn't waste too much wood. So I'll glue one side, then cut them off. Then I have to sand it. Then I'll put it back on the machine and laser it and then cut it out. You're right.
Yeah. Just
Anyway, it's been a journey, as they say.
second thoughts about taking that one on, huh?
Well, I took that one on 37 years ago.
Oh, all right.
My daughter's getting married, so
Okay.
she's married, but now this is the party for it.
Okay. Hey, Dave, are we supposed to be having the picnic in person again this Saturday?
I don't know, Steve. I mean, like I said in the text, I looked for an email, didn't see one. I'm sure there was one, but if there is, we need another one. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'd heard, but I'd cleaned out my email and I don't have anything. So
Yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
gonna skip it, I guess, because I'm not sure where.
Well, if we skip it, we may not get anyone.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, Dave, I think you get waved at.
I'm sorry, I don't have my video on at the moment. I'm just trying to get
Oh,
the meeting going here.
Max, Dave, I just wanted to say hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Okay.
I have to log in as, no, I can't change it. All right. Let's go back. There we are. All right, I'm back. Yeah, I don't know for meeting face to face. I don't remember when it was.
well, it's usually always we're having it the Saturday after the meeting.
Yeah, it was scheduled. I have it on my calendar as a schedule.
Oh, you do? Okay.
And I think we put out an email a long time ago that said there would be this date and this date.
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah.
nobody's been notified, and I'm wondering, given that, whether there's anyone going to show up. But we ought to put out a no one way or the other, because if we cancel it, we don't want people showing up. And
Right. Right.
Well, would it make sense then to just make the decision to not do it until the following Saturday?
I like that idea personally, Steve.
That way we can get an email out.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that makes the most sense.
yeah, I think people who would have come are probably people who keep enough contact that they'll see it and not drive up.
Yeah.
So Steve, when I was at Woodcraft yesterday, they had a very nice clamp that goes parallel. And DeStaco makes one, but the DeStaco clamp is too high off the table, so it tips things. And this has sort of like a shovel thing.
Uh-huh.
And it attaches to a T-bolt. Their bolt is very short, but I'm making a bigger one, cutting off a bigger one. And I think it's going to work pretty well as a way to, push from the side against something. The whole thing's
It got like a little lever that goes side to side, or?
well, you push it and there's a plunger that then pushes ahead. I can go downstairs and get it.
Yeah. Okay, hold on a second. I bought these things. So this goes down into your T-track.
Yeah. Oh, it's a cam on the top.
Yeah, and I gotta say, it's a little bit of it's one of those things where it's great for the right thing, but it's not good for everything.
Yeah.
But then what you do is it's got the cam, and as you do that, yeah, how am I gonna hold this?
But you don't get a lot of distance, and that's the thing that I was looking for.
But it slides in the T-track, and then you get it up like snug, then you tighten the hex bolt in the top.
Well, if you're going parallel to the T-track, I'm usually trying to do it perpendicular to the T-track. Anyway,
Okay, I mean, I think it does what yeah, it was, but they're a little,
I'll go get the one I have. I'll be back in a minute.
Jay, you made it. You're muted.
There, how are you?
Good, good. So what's the ETA for the new house?
30 days. We had a come to Jesus meeting today because it's so slow. It's just painful,
Yeah,
And not only is it painful because we're anxious to get in there, it's painful because it's costing us money. The
Yeah.
delays, So it's a little frustrating, but it is what it is. But they're finishing the cabinets right now. They're gonna template next week for the countertops, flooring. I mean, it's all painting. Everything's kind of happening. There's still a little bit more, a couple of minor things on the exterior before they can start painting. So it's coming along.
uh-huh,
What are you guys talking about, anyways? What is that? Oh, I know.
Oh.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's it. But what's nice is it has a front here that's wide,
oh, okay,
and this distance is more than the distance between my slots. So I think I can put it in a slot, and then it actually has a tensioning device. As you do this, it moves, and and you can adjust the tension. And I'm thinking if I elevate it slightly so it's coming down, it'll actually push the piece across and down. That's the problem I'm always having with hold downs.
well, as I say, what this one does is when the cam runs, it actually tips it down.
Yeah,
So it's
that's good.
pushing.
That's good. That's the problem I'm having. I know people like Dave don't have these problems with their fancy vacuum tables, but
Dave has the problem when he wants small stuff to hold down.
Yeah.
well, that's my problem. It's the small stuff to hold. The big stuff is easy to hold down.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously you do it a lot easier with a vacuum table, but it's not hard because just, put clamps on it. It's the small stuff, especially when you're trying to get close to the edge and so forth, and not eat up your, whatever you're doing to hold things down. Anyway, look like a good device. Seen this again. The Staco makes them, but this bar is high up, and it's just a single knob on the end, and so therefore it tends to flip things, to pull things up as you tighten it, as opposed to pushing them down.
That's pretty cool. Where'd you get that?
Yeah, Woodcraft yesterday,
Nice.
about $40, 30,
Nice.
something like that.
Yeah, nice.
Comes with a with a T-bolt in here that you adjust with the with the wheel, and so this isn't big enough, but I'm just going to cut a bigger bolt, and then it should slide right in.
I like how low profile it is. That's quite nice.
It is low profile.
Yeah.
It fits on the table,
I
and
could,
this comes right down to
Well, that
the
rides in your miter slot. Yeah.
comes down to the same level as the as
Yeah.
the is.
Yeah, how far does that extend, Brent?
Uh,
About 6 inches, maybe?
the bar itself is about 3.5 inches.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you get I think you get 3.5 inches of distance.
All right. Cool. Yeah, that's,
I had one like that, but it was only for it's for the bench dogs, you know. It
Yeah.
just had a round bottom and put it in there and
Called- Sorry, it's backwards, called armor.
nice.
So I got it, got it at Woodcraft. I'm sure you could find it elsewhere. I'd never seen it. And it was this part
Mm-hmm.
that was what I was looking for, but that's the problem with the Destaco. It's just round and too high up.
Right.
I've bought all kinds of Destaco clamps on eBay because they're so widely used in factories that you'll get an auction, a factory will shut down or something like that, and they'll have hundreds of those, all in different shapes, vertical and horizontal and clamps and, and I'm just such a big believer in jigs and fixtures that I've got a whole inventory of those things I paid very little for. And I use them all the time. I mean, I'll just make something up. I was routing out a whole bunch of these little spindles for the front porch. And I used a couple of those, just slammed it together in a couple of minutes in order to hold down the ends, hold my template to it, routed out the piece. Next one, it sure beats you using a regular clamp or something, But even if you're only doing 10 or 15 or something, though, I had 120 of these things to do. So a fixture was definitely the way to go.
Nice.
It's interesting to think about the fact that you find them used that way because, I imagine most of them, they don't destroy pretty easily. So they're probably in fine shape when you get them.
Yeah.
and when you get them, like say, when you buy them, used or get them inexpensively, you can just leave them on the fixture.
Yeah,
you-
yeah, exactly. But
Exactly.
the other thing is that they come in the regular ones that put the pressure down, they have the little handle. They come in all kinds of various lengths.
Yep.
So that's what's really handy if you need to reach over a part to squeeze it or clamp it in the middle.
Yep.
It's really handy for that.
Yep. And the self-adjusting ones now that they have are pretty nice.
Believe it or not, I actually brokered a deal for a guy to buy a company. And all they did was, it was a supplier for Destaco. They dipped the red handle into that rubberized plastic and pick it up and go on to the next one. The whole company, that was a small business, but that's their only client was Destaco. And the only thing they did was to dip that handle in that red rubber, on the end of the handle. So I thought that's kind of a sweet little business, made money, wasn't very big, had 2 employees, so
And one big vat of red something.
just about exactly what it was. It was kind of a conveyor that would dip them and then it'd go around so they cooled off. And then they come back around and they ship them down to Detroit someplace, which is of course Detroit. The state, what is it? Steve, you probably know what it just is. Detroit Staple Company or something like that is the real name or how it started. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something. Yeah.
I didn't realize it was Detroit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, I know that the company started out really just being for like machinists and metalworking machine things, all of the tool shops used them,
You ever go in a factory now, they'll have 10 of them if they're doing a CNC and they'll clamp them all down on the part and then they'll run the part on it and unclamp the whole thing, So they're really, really widely used.
a lot of them are changing over. Well, they're basically the same thing, only they're pneumatic,
Yeah,
they'll,
right.
because they want to swap parts out. So hit the pads,
You hit one pedal and they all release and we're all go tight.
yeah.
Yeah. So Dave, how come you're signing in as Jared Shroyer?
Jared's sick. He's not feeling well and he's got the account. So I'm running the Zoom for us today.
Yeah.
He's also taking over all his bank accounts.
No, I'm good. That's all right. I think he needs it for his kid.
All right.
Also, if he uses his Gmail login for his bank accounts, there's something seriously wrong with Jared. I'm just saying. Let me try, actually. That's a great point. Let's see.
Since we all have the password for that.
Yeah, seriously. Given that we email it around, maybe that's a bad plan on his part.
You'll really be sick after all this.
Yeah, seriously.
He's listening at home and frantically changing all of his passwords as we speak.
Too bad you're recording this, You'll know.
Good point. Turn that off. It's too nice out to have a meeting, don't you think?
I agree completely.
It's beautiful out.
Yeah.
Hi, Hirdes.
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't get unmuted and for some reason.
Howdy.
That was an interesting lamp you had. Can we go back to that picture? How do we do that? You have to talk to get on the picture? Maybe.
What's that, Patti?
I was saying, I wanted to see the lamp from the man who just joined us. He had a cool looking lamp there and I was wondering if it was Kamiko, but I didn't get a chance to study it enough.
Oh, John, I think she's talking about your.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
There you go.
yeah. It's a lattice style lamp. It sort of looks like Kamiko, but it's not. I did it all on the Shaper Origin, so it's 4 panels, and then it's got castle joints on it. It was my sort of first project with the Shaper, so I won't tell you about all the mistakes as you're supposed to do, but it was pretty good for a first project.
That's cool.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah,
It does look just like Kamiko, doesn't it?
yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, y'all.
But it took 2 weekends to do instead of 2 years.
What's the lighting inside it? What do you use?
Oh, just an LED light that's just sort of touch sensitive for it. So
You plug it in?
no, well, it's just a USB chargeable, and then
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Right. Well, I think probably should just get started then. That sounds like the same old thing, and it is. We're in-person meetings at MakerWorks. We're still looking at it. They require masks for all groups and meetings. I think that kind of takes a lot of the spirit out of the whole thing, but this could change, and we'll keep everybody apprised. It's just, how it's going. An email was sent out quite a while back, maybe last month, about us having another in-person social meeting on Saturday. I think the original one said the 16th, this Saturday, but since we didn't get another email out or anything like that, we're going to switch it to the 23rd, which will be the Saturday after this Saturday. Okay. Same place, Parker Mill on Geddes Road. We'll get an email out and post it on the website, next day or so. But it seems we didn't follow up on the email, so we want to make sure enough people know about it and don't get.
Yeah, hot dogs, more hot dogs.
Well, we got to make sure Jared gets well then. I mean, geez, that's his specialty. He's
Hot
the
dog.
Yeah. I didn't see the first one, so good. I'm glad you're putting it to the 23rd.
Okay. All right. So we got anybody new on today or?
I can't. I don't know. How do you skip
All
it?
right.
John, you want to unmute? You can hold down your space bar to speak.
Hello, John Shuler here. Joined.
Yeah, John. So how'd you hear about us, John?
I did a Google search.
Oh, well, that's the world nowadays. Okay.
And where are you and what kind of stuff do you do?
I'm in Ypsilanti, and I've built a cabinet and set of legs for a dining room table,
Nice.
that sort of thing.
Good.
And
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be
Well,
moving from Ypsi to Sumter Township in a couple of years after I get my house built.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, welcome. Yeah.
Good.
Welcome.
Yeah, the projects you mentioned are kind of interesting to all of us. So if you ever want to post some pictures and, everybody will be, I'm sure people are going to be interested. So,
I could bring some up and share my screen in a minute.
oh, that'd be great.
We
Because
do a show
actually,
and tell at the start of every one of these monthly meetings and love to see whatever you have. That'd be great.
yeah, actually, the next thing on our agenda is show and tell. So anybody that wants to share their screen and show something, this is the time,
Well, I've got a couple things that folks might be interested in. Brant suggested I show to folks. So one is a built-in window seat that I made for my wife. That's her guitar and amp, and she likes to play by the front window. So
That's beautiful.
yeah, so it's sort of a standard, some panels, some frame, but one thing that's a little bit different with it is if you sort of see the vent here, that's the outlet for heating and cooling. So I cut the grid with the shaper origin and then embedded the bevel clef in there with the shaper origin just to give it a bit of a nice look for, it's a piano room and music room overall. So that was pretty straightforward and easy to do. And also shaping it to the baseboard, that was another thing that was really easy to do with the shaper origin. Just designed the profile in Adobe Illustrator and then placed it on there and cut it. It was pretty seamless to do overall. So that's one project. And then the other one was also both done with the shaper origin. Our son got married on June 10th, so he and his and our new daughter-in-law asked us to make a sign for the wedding, so I decided to make the sign a clock.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's about a 2 foot wide clock. The inlay is cherry for the name and the date, and then walnut inlaid for the circles and the rectangles for the clock times. And it's a bird's eye maple background. They did ask all the people in the wedding to sign it. So now this is on their wall, all signed with the names of the guests that attend there. So it was kind of a nice idea of sort of, the passage of time and their relationship. And then
Cool.
the box here was for gift envelopes. So done with the box joint feature and shaper origin. So that worked quite nicely. There's a hinge and inlay. The is soft hinges. You can now get a template for those for the hidden hinges in the back. So that was pretty straightforward to do. And then this little design in the front, Shaper has something called Shaper Labs, which is a simple design software application that, just doing this design was like 10 seconds, and then you can just quickly load it up and place it. And then for today's theme, finished with Odie's oil after being convinced to try it out with by Branton. It's spectacular. It was very nice. The finish that that gave. So those are mine.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
So anybody else got anything?
Yeah, let me show mine.
Okay.
Great.
Oh,
Nice.
So this this is in our living room, which is actually a fairly narrow room. It's about 10 feet wide. But we wanted a cabinet that we could put our flat screen TV in that wouldn't be too deep and take up all the space in the living room. So I built this. It's only 7 inches deep to contain the television. And then I made these fold down tables in this part of it for the electronics. Looks like that.
Very nice.
And where's the last one? And then down at the bottom is my liquor cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
So this is made out of maple plywood for the sides and tops, and for the panels and the doors. And then the rails and stiles are ash.
Nice. Beautiful.
And I finished this with no stain and polyacrylic.
Beautiful. That's great.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
it looks real clean. I mean, I like the color. I mean, I like how it ended up.
Yeah, and I patterned this after our kitchen cabinets, so it matches the kitchen cabinets, which were off the shelf cabinets.
Nice.
Nice. Very nice.
So the electronics are attached to the shelf, so when you flip them down, when we flip them up, they just stay on there. Is that how it happens?
Yeah, I've got them strapped down on there.
Got it.
Cool. Nice.
And then I'll show you also if I can find the right. It's not showing up here. Oh, different application, that's why. I posted about bringing down some trees. This is a 38-inch diameter oak about a month and a half ago. Were you able to see that video? Was it?
No, it was just
No.
the still shot.
No, you're still sharing the pictures.
Oh,
You
yeah,
have to-
I have
you
to
have-
share a different application, that's why.
Yeah, so I have to stop sharing the pictures, then reshare the video.
All right, let's try it now. Can you see the video
Yeah.
now?
Yeah,
So- There's a little bit of a drop off here, so I was actually down underneath the hill there where I was cutting it down.
Hopefully you were not taking the picture at the same time you were deaf felling it.
No, that was my wife took the video.
Anybody else have a show and tell?
Oh,
I have a very quick one. Just quickly share this here. I was asked by a client to make a bookcase. Not particularly interesting. I don't know if you guys can see this here. I suppose what's interesting about it is it's kind of a mid-century modern or empire style. It's got these curves. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about it is it's got bull-nosed edging on a frameless design, and then these curves. And you know, it's a pretty straightforward build, but I just wanted to show you how I do the curves, because really the only challenge with this is these curved rails.
Right.
Everything else is really easy. And the curved rails, I've got a piece right here. I'm just going to stop sharing real quick. Can you guys see my camera? So
Yeah.
here's an example, one of them. And I just wanted to show you how I made this, because it's super easy to make, and maybe it'll inspire you to make your own. This is just a couple pieces of bending plywood. If I show you the edge, you can see the bending plywood. It's barrel bend plywood. It's really easy to get, with oak veneer on each side. And I made forms and threw some type on two on the pieces and shoved them in the forms and clamped them. And I end up with a curved rail. And then what I do for the bottom is I just take another piece of veneer and joint this dirty edge and set it down on a piece of veneer with some glue and clamp it down on my bench with some hold downs. let that dry and trim it off with a flush router, and you end up with a curved rail. So it's super, super easy to make. It's almost harder to think about how you attach this to the curved piece of plywood than it is to make the curved rail. But again, the reason I'm showing you this is to encourage you to consider bending plywood for curves, right? It's there's really very little required. I didn't use a vacuum press. I didn't use a vacuum bag. It's just a couple of forms made out of MDF with packing tape on either side and some bending plywood and some oak veneer. And you can end up with easy curves.
And Dave, is the name of the product bending plywood, or are you using bending as bending plywood as the way to do it?
No, it's a special plywood. There's two,
Okay.
and it comes in 4x8 sheets, and it comes in various thicknesses. You can get an 1/8 inch or 3/8 inch or 1/4 inch. And there's two forms of it. There's what's called barrel plywood and column, right? And as you can imagine, that dictates the direction of bend. So barrel plywood would be if you're going to make a barrel with a 4x8 sheet versus column, and it will bend easily, very easily, like a noodle in one direction and not easily at all in the other. So it's kind of a fantastic product and then once you glue it, it keeps its shape, right? So, yeah, it's a little pricey right now because it's all import. But you don't use much of it, right? But anyway, I don't know. I thought that might inspire somebody to try something curved. It's really very, very straightforward.
So 2 questions. You use 3/4 inch plywood? Is that what it is?
Now, this is 2 sheets of 3/8.
Oh, 2 sheets. Okay.
Yeah, with 16th inch, because you want as many glue lines as you can get, right?
So
So
that's gonna ask you how you kept what you glued. So you glued between the two pieces.
yeah, so in this case, and I don't know how the detail is here, there's 2 sheets of 3/8, and I have 16th inch thick oak veneer on either side. So by the time it's all together, because it's actually metric, right? It's not actually 3/8. So by the time it's all together, I'm just a hair over 3/4 in total thickness. And that's enough glue lines to keep it together, and keep it holding its shape. But it's, as opposed to trying to do solid wood, it's a really easy way to get curves. So
And how do you attach it to the quadrant?
yeah, so what I did here is, you could see my mark. I literally just took this out of the clamps. I actually used my domino. You could have used your biscuit cutter, but I used the domino and I set it deep for getting into the rail, and I set it shallow for getting into here. And I put dominoes in and put it in the form again, and I made a clamping call that gives me the ability to clamp the edges too. So I made a kind of a call that catches the corner, right? And squares it off so I can grab clamps across it and throw it in the clamps in 5 minutes, I haven't even cleaned this one up yet, but it's kind of it's a perfect joint. I mean, now I cheat because I'm using the CNC to do my curves, but you could just as easily done this with a bandsaw jig, right? And sweep an arc. I mean, there's nothing special about this arc.
Or a router
Right? Yeah. So, but again, when a client, or if you want to incorporate some curves, don't look past bending plywood. It's super easy to use. And, and just one more thing. I put the veneer on at the same time I did the glue up with the bending plywood. It's a 4-layer sandwich, and you just slather on some glue with a roller and shove it in your press, and that's it.
So you didn't wet the veneer?
No, this is 16th inch red oak. And it bent just fine. I mean, there's almost no resistance to the bending plywood, and with calls on either side, it was.
Well, did you still have to steam the plywood?
No. This is just regular plywood. No, this plywood is bending plywood. It's. I might have a piece I can grab. It's very, very floppy. It's meant for this application. It's meant to bend and then glue into a shape, and it dries nice and rigid when you apply glue to it. So.
And Dave, is that the column version or the barrel version? I assume it's column.
This is barrel.
Well, that's barrel. Okay.
Yeah, so it bends along the 8-foot axis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is a sheet of it.
It's a little pricey right now. I think 1/4 inch is like $60 a sheet, maybe a little bit more. It's a little pricey, but you know, you don't typically use a lot of it, right? You typically,
Plywood is priced almost.
No, yeah, I understand, yeah.
yeah, but it used to be cheaper. Right now, I think, you know, 'cause it's an import. It's just expensive right now. But of that 60, I bet you most of it's freight. I mean, what I'm seeing in plywood pricing right now, the raw material itself is not that bad. The freight is brutal. It's crushing my plywood costs. So yeah, but anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
Everything else.
So
Right.
I had some questions on the curves.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So as far as you said, you didn't use your vacuum press at all for any part of that construction?
No.
So then I'm confused. So how did you get the veneer to apply so evenly?
Right. So what I did, just I'll talk through this quickly. It's so I knew my radius, right? I knew the inside and therefore outside radius of the rails because I know the geometry of my inner radius and I expand it by 3/4 of an inch, which gives me the radius of my outside, right? So once you know that radius, you go to the bandsaw or you know, in my case, the CNC, but the bandsaw, and you cut a female and a negative and a male portion of that. So I made essentially a piece that dictates this radius, and then I made a female that dictates the outer radius. And those become my master templates, right? Then I take another piece of MDF and I use that edge of the first one as my master, and I put a flush cutter on a router and true up the edge, and I build up a solid piece of MDF with those radii, right? So you've got one stack for the inside and one stack for the outside, this high, right? And then I cover it with packing tape. So now I've got a form that I can pull together with a 3/4 inch gap in between. And then all I do is I take my stack of bending plywood and veneers and glue them together and shove them in there and clamp the whole sandwich together and let it dry. And when it's done, it comes out exactly, you know, this way, right? It
Awesome.
comes out, yeah.
And so you said that
Very cool.
so then you would joint the bottom edge there, which hasn't been done yet, right?
Yeah, well, so this is the very top of the cabinet. So I'm actually going to leave that because it's 9 feet in the air, but the bottom side is veneered.
Okay. But if that was pieces to be on the bottom, you would joint it and then just put a flat sheet of veneer on the bottom, glue
That's
it. And with the gluing, you don't do the vacuum press it. You just clamp it down.
You know what I did? Jacob, I used on my bench, I've got the dog holes, right?
Yeah.
And I've got those big dog, you know, the things that you pound in. I literally put the veneer on the bench and I put this down on it with some glue and I pounded a few of those things down. So it's pressed down on it and an hour later it's done.
Awesome. And one last.
We're talking literally, this is a 10-minute build once you get your forms made.
Awesome. So then the last question is, you said you dominoed it. How'd you domino on a curve? Would you do it with straight and then?
Sure. So you could see my marks where I dominoed and I set the domino with a bigger depth, right? And I just registered the fence and the fence bridged across the opening, obviously.
Oh, who cares? Yeah.
And then just go in deep enough to make sure you don't blow through the face. And then I went in a little shallower on this side, pound in your
And you're
domino.
done.
There's nothing to it.
Cool.
And you can do it with a biscuit cutter. You know, you can do it with a slot cutter on a router. Like really, all you need to do is get some registration. So when you clamp it, it doesn't move.
That's really clever.
Anyway,
Sure.
so
That's
yeah.
cool.
I have a real quick question, Dave. Does that bending plywood bend in either direction along the axis?
So
Is it
yeah,
bent-
there's two styles, right? There's barrel and column.
No,
and-
but
It goes both ways,
does it
this
bend?
way or this way.
Yes, it's equally floppy in both directions of the axis it bends.
All right.
Yes. And again, the theory with this material is that you bend it whichever way you want. And as long as you get a glue line between it and a layer of itself or another piece of that, you're done. Because once that glue line is formed, it's rigid in the shape you put it. So, and I mean, I can't stress enough how easy it is to bend. There's there's no resistance, right? You take a couple strips of the stuff and stick it in a form. It's like a noodle. It doesn't resist you at all.
What-
So it's really very, very simple.
What's
If
the
you,
minimum radius of the bend you can do on it?
well, so if you go with the thinner material, you can get very tight, right? If you use the 1/8 inch, for example, which I do occasionally, you can get very tight. The 3/8, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 inches. I mean, it's really floppy. Way tighter than this.
Mhm.
Way tighter than this. I mean, it didn't even put up a fight, right? But with the 1/8 inch, you could probably go a lot tighter. So I use a lot of it and it's really helpful stuff. So maybe that encourages you to make a curve thing, you know?
Well, I mean, the alternative doing it is things that I've done, for example, just using wood, cutting them into 1/8 inch thick veneer, not veneer, but strips, and then using the same form that you have, putting a form and then a bunch of clamps. I was looking for a picture and I'm just not coming up with it right away. It made a rocker, the rocker part of a rocker for the legs that way, and glued it with that glue that you suggested, which holds beautifully. So it's
Yeah, and
you press male and the female, and you press both together, and you get your curve.
I think that's a great way to go, right? Is basically resawing or using commercial pieces of veneer and doing your own that way. The one thing I'll say though is when you use the solid wood, you will get some spring back, right? Like even if you use ultra thin veneers, you'll get some spring back. Whereas with the bending plywood, you don't get any spring back, right? Because it just locks in to the shape you put it. And what I found was in doing it this way, there's two things. There's two things. The first one I made was of solid wood. In fact, it's right here. Like you said, Brant, this is the first version I made with 16th inch veneers bent this way. And there's a little bit of spring back. It opened up a little bit and I couldn't get it to flush up as nicely to the edge. And that's a visible joint. So I went with the bending plywood. But what I like about that approach is the grain is consistent around the bend. Whereas the way I did it here, by edge bending it, the grain's kind of wonky around the bend, which, I don't know. I don't think the client's going to care, but pros and cons. This thing put up a fight when I put it in the clamps.
Yeah.
It was tricky, right? It put up a fight. This did not put up a fight. So anyway, it's two approaches. You could do both. Yeah. Anyway.
Very cool material. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
It's a very cool material, though. No
It really is. It's really handy.
All right. Okay, hey, Jay, can you say just a couple things about the fundraiser we're doing for Eric, or does anybody else can talk about that, or?
Yeah, Eric Florup is a saw maker. Can you hear me all right? Because I was having trouble with my microphone earlier. It's okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Eric is a veteran, and he's a saw maker up northern Michigan, and makes these dovetail saws and stuff like that, which you can usually get them on eBay. They're absolutely fabulous, and of course they cost $400 or something like that. But as usual, they're a beautiful piece of work. He has been diagnosed with glioblastoma, which you may be familiar with. John McCain died of that. Ted Kennedy died of that. It's a brain tumor. It's terminal. And I'm not sure exactly what his current status is, but he had an operation. They removed most of it, but it's one of those things where he's on the clock. And one of our members, who will be anonymous here because by his choice, has donated a plane, a skew plane from Veritas, and we are taking donations, and all the money is going to go to help Eric out and his family. He's got a couple of little kids, that kind of thing. So there is a GoFundMe account out there, and right now we're at like 275 or $80, something like that, on the plane. And you can go to either the website, or you can just send a donation in $5 increments for tickets. So we're actually going to auction off this plane or raffle it off, and we're going to give this a couple of months to get some steam going, and probably in the September meeting we'll auction or raffle it off. And $5 a ticket. It's the same way we used to do all the time with the raffles. $5 to semi-www.raffle@gmail.com. PayPal, please. Friends and family. We did get somebody already that forgot to do that, but anyways, it's a really good cause. He can use the money. He's a veteran, and as usual, a lot of self-employed. You know, he's going to be buried in medical expenses. So we're just trying to do what we can.
I
What's his
went to their website and he had the surgery and he's out and he's home, but like as you just said, he's self-employed and you know, the operation was, you know, a big expense. So,
Yeah. And I hate to be blunt about it, but he's buying time. This is not one of those things that you're going to have remission or something like that. It just isn't the nature of the beast. So,
Yep.
you know, now's the time to do it. We're going to try to get him some money. He's got a wife and a child, and we're just going to try to help him out a little bit. So,
okay.
What's his last, can we know his last name?
it's Florip. It's Florip. I think it's on the website.
Florip. All right, thanks.
No, I think it's K. Last letter's K, isn't it?
I'm sorry, it could be. Yeah, I actually don't know him. This came to me from one of our members. So I'm just sort of taking the lead on it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not my idea. I don't take credit for this. It was somebody else's idea. So I'm just trying to, you know, give that person some anonymity, and I'm going to just sort of take over on managing it.
Okay.
Picture of the plane,
What was that?
the plane that's being raffled. Do you have a picture of that?
I don't. You know what it is? It's a Veritas block skew, right-hand skew block plane. I will get a picture of that on the website, and I've meant to, and I didn't. There's a right and a left hand. This is the right-hand skew. So, these planes are $200 or something like that. So, you know, it'll be a nice price for somebody.
Sorry to hear that. I dropped into his.
Tim's got a picture of it there.
That's his name right there. That's Eric.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. I can't. Oh, there it is. I can't read it.
Oh, it is a P at the end. Okay.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's Eric with a K.
Yep.
Anyways, a few bucks, couple of $10, $15, you know, that's what we've been getting. I mean, you want to do more, that'd be great. It's a good cause.
Okay. All right.
Just can I
Next-
just show something I thought I would show what I did that I was talking about. Does that come up? Okay.
Yeah.
So that was how I made the rocker, the base for the rocker. So each of these in here, these are strips. I had 8 of them. I made this form out of MDF with holes for all the clamps. Big messy job, but put it there. This is a piece of thin plywood, so it would bend with blocks, so I could attach the clamps to it and then sandwich the whole thing together. Worked remarkably well. Came out with a very, very nice rocker, but heck of a lot more work than the bending plywood. Pros and cons.
So I've got a question for Dave then. Structurally, so, you know, Brandt's rocker, presumably there'll be a child on that rocker rocking, putting weight down and romping around with it.
It's adult rocker.
It's an adult rocker. So would bending plywood tolerate those kind of forces?
Oh, I definitely think it would. I mean, I think what I would do in that case is use thinner bending plywood and use more of it, right? So
Okay.
you get more glue lines. I think in Brandt's case though, Brandt, correct me if I'm wrong, the edges of that piece that we just saw are exposed, right? Like that's
Yeah.
so in that world, Brandt did it the only way I would do it. I wouldn't go back and
Yeah.
try to like veneer over the edges.
Yeah.
of that
'cause-
piece. Or if
'cause
you
with-
want to shape it, right? If you want to put a bull nose on it, you can't do it my way. So
Yeah, so with Brandt's, the finishing would look like a solid piece of wood that's just bent, right?
exactly. And there's no doubt that his way is stronger. But I mean, I'm not at all concerned about the load on a comparable piece done with bending plywood and the right glue.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's beautiful, Brandt. Really nice.
And that's the rocker.
Beautiful.
I got somebody to make the leather seat for me. So I got that professionally done and bought the piece of leather.
That's awesome.
Wasn't that expensive to do, and they did a great job on it.
Nice.
Very comfortable chair. Now I'm sharing this. There you go.
I can tell you the
Okay.
leather probably cost more than the whole chair did. So I
Yeah.
had that same thing done.
You know, if I can add a little bit on this bending plywood. If you go to a credit union that's been built out in the last 10 or 15 years, when you go up to the counter,
Yeah.
they're all have a radius to them. That's what they're using.
Yep.
You see it commercially for the last 15 years. It's very popular.
Yeah, and by the way, it's also really good if you want to do like flat baseboard in your house and sheet around a
Yep.
curve. Just slap some bending plywood down
Oh,
there,
yeah.
and face it and paint it and call it a day, you know?
Yep.
It's a great material. It's good to know.
All right, our August meeting topic will be next month is going to be picture frames. And, how do you, what do you do your corners? 45, something else? How do you conquer that? Or what are your stories? Materials, profiles, inlays, use a domino. Anyways, it's all going to be about picture frames next month. So keep that in the back of your mind, and with that, let's talk about what's your favorite finish?
I should get a show and tell. One of my favorites was one I bought when I was in Vermont for a couple months in 2015, going to a woodworking school. And it was one they made there that I think is made with whey, WHEY. I should grab the can. I still have it. I have no idea what the life is on finish, but I liked it. It just was nice to work with.
Hey, Patty, is that from Vermont Natural Coatings? Is that the brand name?
I don't remember. I have to look.
Yeah.
It might be. It's in the back room and I didn't grab it, but I can go grab it and then jump in here after somebody else maybe.
Well, I sort of gave it away when I was talking about my TV piece that I showed everybody. I used polyacrylic on that, and that's one of my favorite finishes to use for really light colored woods because it's crystal clear, doesn't have any yellow to it, so it doesn't change the color of the underlying wood.
I'll mention kind of an off the wall one. I had to do some things for children, some like toys and this, that thing. And then I did some puzzles, logic puzzles, where there's all these small corners and everything and hard, you'd be terrible trying to do them any other way. But beeswax and mineral oil, you heat up the beeswax in the mineral oil till it's kind of like a soup, you shave up the beeswax, put it in the mineral oil. I used one of those cups that they sell for heating chocolate, for cooking.
Double boiler.
And then you just put whether it's paper towel, rag, or whatever, you just wipe it all over it. And the mineral oil just goes right in, it goes in, pops the color, the grain and all that. And the beeswax, it's got a nice finish on it. And, if you're dealing with children or anything like that, it's safe, so. And I've seen some things I did that are, a decade old and they still look good. So, just throwing that out there.
Steve, how many coats did you put on it?
Usually one.
Okay.
Just, you slather it on and then you just wipe it until it gets done.
Well, that ratio of mineral oil and beeswax is used for cutting boards. And I made up about 16 ounces of that, and I give it away in those little 1 ounce cups that you get it. I got a whole bunch of those from Gordon Food Service with lids on them. A tablespoon of that stuff will last you years because you just put it on the cutting board with your hands. let it soak in, buff it off, and you're good to go for another year because it's food grade. You have to use food grade mineral oil and beeswax. So, and then it's non-toxic, great for toys. It doesn't polymerize or turn hard the way that Odie's oil or one of these oils does. But yeah, I use that stuff all the time, you know.
You can just,
So why do the other ones polymerize? We've got enough people that are chemists or chemical engineers. What's the difference between, I understand the mineral oil and beeswax, but why would a wax thing like Odie's oil polymerize?
Chemists don't know.
Well, I'm not a chemist, but I think I know some of the answer to that. So my understanding is that Odie's, and it's not just Odie's, I mean, Rubio Monocoat, Osmo, any of the hard wax oils, right? They're all the same. You know, I think Walrus oil is one of them. Tried and True Original is a hard wax oil. And most of them are food grade. And most of them are the same general formulation, right? It's a combination of natural resins and waxes. So whether it's pine resin, or I don't know what kind of resin they're using in these various things. And I don't know which natural oils they're putting in, but I know that with Odie's, for example, when it finally does polymerize, what they claim is that it soaks into the wood and fills the voids that you know, go in between the cells that was filled with the fluids and resins when the tree was alive, right? When you kill the tree and the tree dries out, those straws become hollow and dry. So when you put water on a dry piece of wood, it soaks it right in because it's just penetrating right through those straws and through the cells and into the, you know, in between the lignin bonds. And so their theory is that by putting this resinous, waxy stuff back in such a way that it penetrates, at least with Odie's, after a couple of weeks, it turns into a hard wax. I know this because when I first started using Odie's, I would apply it with buffing pads, you know, these non-woven 3M pads. And, you know, one of them I didn't throw out. I kind of tossed it to the side. And a few weeks later, I picked it up and it was like rock hard. You couldn't stick your thumbnail into it. And that was pretty telling, right? So, and that's kind of indicative of hard wax oils and what they do. The one thing is Rubio, they cheat because Rubio uses, it's a two-part and there's a hardener, right? So what Rubio Monocoat's doing, it's the same general formulation, but they're using an isocyanate as the second part to kick it so that it can polymerize in like 6 hours. Whereas, you know, whereas Osmo is mineral spirits based, takes a little longer to flash off and polymerize, and Odie's takes a long time to polymerize, a function of days and weeks, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But Rubio, they're like, well, you know, people don't want to wait. We'll use this two-part. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is the benefit of hard wax oil being natural and food grade is certainly mitigated by adding an isocyanate. And for those who are chemists here, I think they would agree that's one of the worst things you can do is be exposed to isocyanates. It's nasty stuff. And Rubio sells it as the hardener. So there's been recently a pretty big war on Instagram between the Odie's folks and the Rubio folks, because Rubio markets it as a natural hard wax oil, but then they sell this isocyanate kicker. And they're certainly bigger and more popular. But, you know, to each their own. I've standardized on Odie's, but it's not the only one. I like Tried and True as well. I don't think there's much of a difference necessarily between a hard wax oil and an oil blend that you might make with a mineral oil and a wax. And, you know, I guess if you blended it the right way and picked the right oils, it's going to do the same thing, right? I don't know.
I don't think mineral oil will turn into a polymer for some reason.
No, that's true.
Linseed oil, like here's a bit of trivia that linoleum is linseed oil and sawdust. And what they used to do is to mix that linseed oil, boiled linseed oil and sawdust, roll it out into sheets, and then it would turn into a polymer and form what we all remember as linoleum back in the like 20s or 30s or something like that, way before Formica. But, you know, painters have been using linseed oil for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And before they came to oxygenated or a boiled linseed oil, the linseed oil in a paint, like fine painting, used to take months and months and months to cure, which is why those artists could paint away, cover it up to block the oxygen, come back later. You know, that's what that cover was all about. They put the canvas over to reduce the amount of air, lift it and paint. It'd take them months to finish these paintings before the oil would actually begin to cure, if you will, cure as opposed to dry, meaning the oxygen gets to it, molecules became long chain hydrocarbons and they become solid from a liquid, you know. So, but you know, Armor Seal is another polymerizing oil, which I love, but you got to wait about a month for that stuff to actually finalize, become hard. And then over the years, like I've got a bunch of furniture over here that I did with Armor Seal. In the first month, it feels like it's soft, and then gradually it gets harder and harder and harder over time. So,
but Jay, I think the fundamental difference between Armor Seal and a hard wax oil is Armor Seal is a urethane, right? That's
no, different products. Yeah.
Yeah, it's forming a cross-linked film, right? And I love Armor Seal. It's arguably my favorite finish. The stuff's amazing. But you know, the hard wax oils are meant to penetrate the wood and not sit on the surface. It is not a film finish.
Right.
They were formulated for flooring.
Right.
Yeah, so chemically, and Jay kind of gave it away, it's a reaction with oxygen in the air.
Yeah.
Causes the polymerization. And what it does is it creates epoxide cross linkages between the molecules of the oil. And that's what causes it to polymerize.
Thank you.
Here's a pad. Just, I mean, this might make for terrible zoom, but just to give you an idea, right? Like this was a very soft red pad that I applied Odie's with. And about 3 weeks later, I mean, you can't tell, but this thing is hard. Now it's not like plastic hard, it's waxy hard, right? It's a dense hard. But if you can imagine this substance that's in this pad soaked into the wood and turning into this, nothing else can get in, right? So will it stop you from scratching the surface? No. But will it stop water or anything else from penetrating the wood? Yeah, because there's no room for it to go if it soaks in and turns into whatever this is. So I don't know. I mean, the stuff was formulated for floors. I know people use it with great success. I use it for kitchens, and I've not had a single client bitch me yet, you know, using a hard wax oil, and it feels wonderful. I mean, it feels.
Yeah.
And you could sand it up to like 400, 500 grit and put that stuff on it. It feels like $1 million.
You know what? I did a bathroom vanity that I'm waiting to install. I took that walnut to about 600 and then put Odie's on it. It's glassy. It's fabulous, you know?
Well, another advantage of Odie's oil is I made a couple of trays for my daughter, put Odie's on, and they're wonderful. They feel really nice, which is what Dave was saying. But when I went out there, they showed me that on the back of the tray, because they had put them down on something, they gotten a bit scratched and so forth. I got some Odie's oil, you know, put another coat on, perfect. Looked like they were new. So totally repairable. You didn't have to sand or anything, just put another coat of Odie's oil on.
So what about heat resistance with Odie's? If you put a hot cup of coffee on, is that going to cause a problem?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I don't know, right? Like, would I use it for a countertop? I wouldn't use it for a kitchen countertop. I might use it for a laundry countertop or like a, you know,
like a side table. It's like
I would use. I mean, I do use it for side tables, largely because of the repairability that Brant is, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what. I don't think there's going to be any you know, intrinsic heat resistance. It's wax, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that I really liked about it after Brant convinced me to try it is I'd been doing a lot of stuff where I had this mixture of Watco Danish oil and Flectoverathane. It was a 3-to-1 mixture, and it was easy to apply and all that. But it, even with several coats, the finish looked kind of dry after a while. Whereas, one coat of the Odie's, it just looked luxurious instantly.
Yes. Yeah.
Looks great, feels great. Per Zaret's suggestion, I used it for the slides I built for my kitchen cabinets. I'm amazed at the durability. Day in and day out, I slide big heavy metal pans, cast iron pans across it. I'm not really gentle, and you would never know. It was going on a year and a half old of daily, nearly cast iron use.
I mean, again, it was made for flooring, right? I mean, I would personally never do a floor again with a polyurethane. Never. I've got hard wax oil on my white oak floors in my own house, and we've got 3 dogs. One is an enormous dog, and man, we don't even think about it. I mean, they pee on it and it sits there, doesn't soak in, and they scratch it, and it's
Let them out, Dave. Let them out.
good idea. Is that the trick? Man, is that a Canadian thing? Walking?
Yeah. We'll let our dogs pee inside. It's not so nice.
You go bite your ankle. Tell me how I know about that.
They're different up north.
Yeah.
I found my oil or my finish.
Oh, tried and true.
It's this thing. It says this is old now. I mean, I've had it for 7 years now. It says Sutherland Well Limited. And I never understood what polymerized, I don't think I still do, means, but it says interior polymerized tongue oil. Mine doesn't have whey. I think, David, I saw that when I was in Vermont, and I think you're right. It's Vermont, whatever you said it was. Vermont something works. But this was so nice.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember what it costs or anything or why I bought this one. It was probably recommended. And I just have one table that's, elsewhere in my, oh no, it's not, it's right there. I forgot. I made a table, a big table, apron, and I use this stuff, and it's still beautiful.
Sutherland Wells makes spectacular finishes. Their finishes are beautiful. Think of Sutherland Wells' products as a much higher quality version of General Finishes Seal-A-Cell and Armor Seal, right? So Sutherland Wells makes a really high-end version of Seal-A-Cell, which is the polymerizing penetrating oil, right? Their stuff is spectacular. I like to use it. It's very, very expensive. I mean, a gallon of that stuff would be a couple $100, right? Whereas, General Finishes is serving the more mass market. But Sutherland Wells makes spectacular products.
I'm surprised I bought something that expensive, but I don't know. I don't recall now, to be honest. And I've still got this quart, which feels like it's about half full. Whether it's useful or not, I don't know.
You might want to put that in a stop loss bag. The stop loss bags are great for saving oil-based finishes.
I don't know what a stop loss bag is.
You grab one.
Oh, you got one, Dave? Yeah, the trouble with anything that polymerizes, as soon as you open the can, you're on the clock.
Yeah.
Because the oxygen gets in there. We did a group buy, Steve, years ago for these stop loss bags, and I use them all the time, right there.
So this is a stop loss, a really dirty one. I've got like 30 of these. I use the and this one has water locks in it. You could tell by the really deep amber color. But the thing is, it's like an IV bag, right? But there's no air. You squeeze the air out and cap it. So the second I open an oil-based finish, the first thing I do is put it in the stop loss bag. This will last years. Years. Oh yeah. With no air getting to it, you never lose any finish. So yeah. And I mean, look how dirty this bag is. I probably reused this thing for 5 years.
So, but the fact that it's been closed for all these years, I mean, it was open obviously when I used it, and I did several coats, but I'm wondering I guess I can just try it.
So the trouble is there's air on top of that other half of the can. That's what your problem is.
Okay. Okay,
But if it's an oil-based finish, you can peel off that film and the stuff underneath is good.
Yeah.
okay,
There's only so much oxygen in that can.
Right.
Once that oxygen combines with to form the polymer, then the polymerization process stops.
Yep.
So underneath that little puck is good finish. You
oh,
know?
good. So, and so
Oh.
these stop loss bags, I guess you can buy it, and
They're-
maybe Amazon even.
Amazon, Lee Valley, Woodcraft.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I buy things from Lee Valley.
We,
Often.
By the way, they
I
make
think
a
about
really
another
nice-
group buy for those, Steve, you know, because
Yeah.
they're so useful. I probably got some. In fact, I'm just using some today. So.
But they make
And
a
what
really,
happened was when we did the original group buy, we went to Stop Us directly. They gave us a really nice deal on the little filler cup, the little tube on the end, you know. And
Little,
they
and
turned
we got
out to
little
be-
funnels.
Yeah, the funnel. They're a couple of dollars each. But I just bought a gallon of a General Finishes product called Outdoor Oil. And the first thing I did when I brought it home was I made 4 quarts of that stuff and sealed them up, you know? So, because you could buy a gallon of something for the same price as like 2 quarts, you know? So you may as well buy a gallon, put it in those bags, and then you've got it for the future. You don't have to worry about it going off on you, you know?
Stop
Well,
Loss.
good to know.
They also sell these funnels to
Yeah.
fill them.
I say
right?
buy the funnel because they're fabulous.
Yeah, so it's like a little rubber funnel, right? With a rubber end, and the rubber end fits right over there, so you can fill it
Uh-huh.
up. But the beautiful thing about this funnel is being that it's rubber, you just leave it dirty, and then when you're done, you flip it inside out or blow it out with air, and the film that's on it just blows right off.
Yeah, it's probably silicone, but I'm not gonna argue.
Oh, it might be. You might be right. Yeah, probably silicone. That's a good point. And why would you not argue, Jay? Why stop now? I don't.
Something with split hairs, you know?
Yeah.
I get accused of that a lot, you know,
There's
but
something
nothing sticks to silicone, you know?
But this seriously, this is worth like every penny. These things
Yeah,
are
because I think we got a deal on the funnels too, is what happened.
Yeah.
you know?
But they're not very expensive, even if you buy them.
No.
The funnels are sold on Amazon to the 3D printing community.
nice.
For-
There you go.
Good to know.
If you want to know the chemical reason, what the difference is the mineral oils or mineral spirits are fully saturated, and the natural oils are polyunsaturated. So it's saturation sites that the polymerization takes place.
Oh,
Okay.
huh.
So polyunsaturated fats are what give you arteriosclerosis. Your your veins harden because it's unsaturated fats that you're eating, and then you know, a little joke. Never mind.
So don't drink palm oil? Is that what you're saying?
Replace them.
No, avoid oxygen.
Avoid
Yeah.
oxygen.
And don't cook your French fries in your woodworking finishes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Palm oil French fries? Yum.
Yeah.
I have another
It's
Odie,
natural oil.
I have another Odie's question. I'm looking at the Lee Valley site, and there's 6 Odie's products. So there's Odie's Universal Oil, Odie's Dark Oil.
Yeah.
And there's Odie's Wax 2 variants and Odie's Butter 2 variants. Why the dark oil, and what's the wax and the butter for?
Okay, so the dark oil. So the dark oil, all they do is when they're formulating it, they leave in rather than filter out some of the tannins from some of the raw products. So it's slightly darker. I have to tell you, well, here. This is what I'm using right now. And I have to tell you, I don't notice a difference. Like I've done samples side by side of a piece of walnut with the dark and the regular. I don't really notice a difference. There might be a difference. There might be a difference after a few weeks. I'm not noticing a big difference. There's still no pigment in it, right? It's not like it's a pigmented finish, but it's darker by its nature. But the other thing about it that I understand is that you can't use the dark outside, where you can use the regular outside.
Okay.
So I think that any UV protection that is in the regular is not in the dark. And I think it's a function, they don't really talk much about it, but I think it's a function of how they process the raw materials to get the dark versus the regular that strip out the UV protection or otherwise leave it in. I don't know how you'd say. So dark versus regular, I don't know. Odie's original is kind of my go-to.
Right.
Now the butter. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you take Odie's regular and heat it up, either via friction mechanically or actually warm it, it thickens and turns into like a almost a waxy consistency, which is the butter. So the butter is chemically exactly compatible with Odie's oil, right? Like it's the same thing, it'll do the same thing, but what it can do is fill the pores in on the surface a little bit more to give you a little bit more sheen. So what a lot of people do is they'll use the penetrating oil as the first coat to kind of get in the wood and work its way through the wood, let that dry, and then come back with the butter, especially like epoxy table guys. That's what they do, is they'll use the super pen, you know, get the stuff in and then get a shine with the butter. So now the wax is a traditional wax. I don't believe it's chemically the same as Odie's oil. I believe it's compatible, but my understanding is their wax is a traditional wax.
Interesting.
Just branding it.
Say again?
They're just branding it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I really use the super penetrating oil a lot, and I use the regular Odie's a lot.
So Dave, let me ask you something. I'm right in the middle of doing this where we've got an island, walnut island. It's 2.5 inches thick, 88 inches long. It's in the middle of the kitchen. My intention is to sand that to 400, 600. And the question, this is in the kitchen. Now, we're not cooking on it because it's in an island, but I've done just regular Odie's oil on that, but something you're suggesting a penetrating oil first, followed by the butter, or followed by regular Odie's oil?
No, if that was in my house, I would sand it just like you said, sand it way up in grit. And I would do the super penetrating oil, and then the regular Odie's oil.
Oh, and then regular, okay.
Yeah, that's what I would do. And I wouldn't hesitate to. I mean,
What would you use the super penetrating?
why would you use the super pen?
What?
What do you mean?
What would you use super penetrating?
I would use the super penetrating oil as the first coat.
What kind?
That's the
Odie.
Odie's he's talking about.
Oh, Odie.
Yeah.
Because all I see is Odie's universal oil. I don't see an Odie's super penetrating oil on the Lee Valley side anyway.
I was with you, Hirdes. I didn't know that was another product.
No, I think I've seen, he's probably got some right there.
Either that or he stares intently at it.
Here, this is the super pen, and it looks remarkably like Odie's. It's really thin, right? It's like really thin. It's, you know, not like Odie's, which is like honey, right? Like the viscosity of this stuff.
Right.
So you have to let that, what interval between the applications?
Well, it's funny because I talked to their like expert. One of their chief guys is up in Canada, on the Far East side, and I talked to him for a couple hours on the phone, and he gave me a different answer than is on their website. So I don't know if I know the right answer, but what I do, Jay, is 3 days.
Okay.
So I do the super pen, let it soak in, wipe it off, and leave it for 3 days, and then come back with Odie's. I don't think it really matters. What he told me was this. He said the super penetrating oil is really a stabilizer. Like this stuff what he said was it will continue to migrate through the cells of the wood. Like it'll, unlike the Odie's, which will flash and turn into that wax and ultimately stop migrating, this stuff will keep migrating. So where they use it, they'll use it on wet wood or unstable wood or a live edge slab or anything where you want to hit both sides of it and stabilize the wood itself. And it's chemically, of course, completely consistent with Odie's. It's just how they manufacture it. And what he said is when they do live edge slabs or thick slabs, they do super pen, they let it soak in, and they come back with Odie's over it. He said,
so, what you're bringing up is the issue of one coat burning into the next, the way lacquer does, and Rubio monocoat, you can't do that with.
No.
I mean, it's one and done, Because you can't go back over it.
I did a job. I did a 6-unit, it was like 6 cherry bookcases, and I did it with Rubio. This was before I knew about hard wax oils, really, right? I figured I'd try Rubio, did a couple samples, and I didn't dislike the finish. I mean, I got a matte finish, a matte cherry finish, and it went on pretty easy. And, you know, it's probably plenty durable, but you can't touch it up, like you said. And I was bathing in isocyanates to put it on, because I'm sitting there mixing these 2 parts. And, you know, it's really expensive, which a lot of these are. And I just don't know why you would choose to use a non-safe version of hard wax oil when there's alternatives.
Well, but Rubio's got a whole palette of colors, you know?
Yes.
So if you want a floor that has a gray tone or whatever, you're not going to get that in it, you know?
Well, you can get it with Odie's too. So they sell pure pigments, which
are. That's
pure
right. I
pigments.
saw that. It's a powder, isn't it?
Yes. And you mix it with Super Pen, the super penetrating oil, and make a stain. And man, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I haven't used it. I saw it. That's right. Yeah.
But you know what sucks though is they don't sell samples.
Yeah.
So if you want to know what color you need, you're buying $300 in pigments to figure out, you know, that's really a shame. I've kind of chastised them a little bit about that, but like, whatever. It's probably a packaging thing. I have probably 6 of them at this point, and they make beautiful samples. I mean, they're quite nice. I don't know.
So Dave, we started by talking about Odie's oil followed by the butter, and now you're talking about Super Pen, followed by Odie's, followed by the butter.
No, I mean, you can, right? I mean, it's just adding another layer, right? So with everything else, right? You could put another layer on and buff it off, and you're getting that much more sheen and protection. But the thing with Odie's, as you know, Brant, is it's not a film finish. You get it off the surface, right? You put it on, you let it soak in, you remove it entirely. You buff it until it's gone, and then let it be. So, you know, if you did 1 coat of Odie's and buffed it off and left it alone, you'd get a nice matte or flat finish. If you wanted it a little shinier and you sand it up and grit a little bit, you could come back after that's cured with the butter, put a coat of butter on, let it sit for a few hours and buff that off, and it'll be a little shinier. That's kind of what they're marketing their product line as. But the thing is, they're all chemically compatible. So it's not like like you said, Jay, with the burn-in. It's not like you know, if you've got Odie's on there for 6 months, that's why I use it for kitchens. Because I could say to a client 2 years down the road that gets a scratch in a cherry door, like, here's a piece of 320 sandpaper, go ahead and sand out that scratch and go ahead and put some Odie's oil on it, and you're going to be right back to where you were.
Yeah. You know, you've illustrated something though, which is, since it's not on the surface, you have to sand to a higher grit than you normally would. A lot of finishes, you can go to 220 and a polyurethane finish sits on there, covers up all those scratch marks to give you a nice glossy finish. You can't do that with Odie's. You got to, I learned that lesson the hard way. You got to go way past what you normally would sand. I'm talking 440, 600, you know?
And you can't skip or shortcut, right? Whatever sanding you do is going to be revealed in the finish.
Yeah, I know. I get this huge table. In fact, I talked to you one time about, in fact, I contacted Odie's about that, and they said, just sand it off, you know, and go, and you don't have to worry about stripping it or anything like that.
No.
And I may someday take this table, sand it off, go back up to a higher grit, because I'm not totally happy with the finish on it, you know. Not an Odie's issue. I just didn't sand it high enough.
Well, I'll tell you, I've had to sand cured Odie's in wood. Good luck, man. I mean, it's brutal to get off. I mean, your better bet is to grab a card scraper and start scraping it, because for like 1/8 of an inch, it's just a waxy, gummy, you know, I mean, and not liquid gummy, hard gummy, right? But man, it fills the grain, and getting it off sucks.
Well, I may put another coat on before I try that then. you
Yeah.
know?
There you go.
Dave, I've got a question for you then.
Yeah.
Would you use Odie's on top of a veneer?
Oh, I use it all the time on veneer,
Oh, you do?
all the time. Natural wood veneer. Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't work, doesn't affect the bond.
No, no.
Okay.
I mean, I've had great success with it. I think if it's a commercial veneer, like a super thin veneer, the
Yeah.
hard part is sanding up to where you want to sand without blowing through the veneer, right? Like that, sometimes that's a little bit challenging. Like if you want to get up to 600 grit on a 30,000th veneer, by the time you're at 400, you're pretty thin on the edges. So, you got to be a little careful, but no, I mean, I use it on leather too.
Oh,
And by the way, about 40% of their business is concrete floors. Like polished concrete. Because it does the same thing in concrete that it does in wood. Like it'll penetrate into the concrete and makes this waterproof, waxy, beautiful finish. And they do about 40% of their business in concrete flooring.
which is big right now.
Yeah. And I mean, look, there's other hard wax oils, right? I mean, this doesn't need to be a commercial for Odie's. I mean, Osmo makes fantastic products. Osmo's great stuff, but it's mineral spirits based, right? So in some cases that's good. In some cases it's not good. I'd like to not use hydrocarbons if I can avoid it, but like they make great products. Not a fan of Rubio personally because of the isocyanate. I think it's disingenuous and dangerous personally. That's just me. But there's, Tried and True is a wonderful product. That's a hard wax oil also. Very similar to Odie's and fantastic. There's a lot of these, right? I've just standardized on this one because I know it.
Well, moving on to the favorite finishes, I know something we haven't, in fact, the guys who make Windsor chairs will appreciate this, which is milk paint. And I'm talking about real milk paint, not the kind you buy in a can. This is the stuff you mix up, and it's a lye-based formula, and you got to use it. I have to tell you something. It is the most durable finish out there. It's unbelievable. Now, they typically use it on, furniture and stuff like that. It sands off. They do all those layers on the Windsor chairs and stuff. But it's a really interesting product and not cheap, but really, really, it comes in all these fabulous colors too. So I've used it on a number of projects, and it's really kind of fun. I mean, you mix that up. Once you mix it up, it's like concrete, which is essentially what it is. And you gotta use it. It doesn't store overnight, and it's really kind of a nice product. If you ever want really bright, dense color in something, milk paint's the way to go, and it's unbelievably durable. So, and safe, kid safe, it's non-toxic.
Have you put the oil over the top of it to enrich it?
I have not. No, I've only used it as a finish on some sort of vintage style furniture. I think you can put stuff over it, but I never did. So
They talk about putting an oil over it. I think it's linseed oil.
it could, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Yeah, I did I made a cabinet for some saws, just a saw till, and I used that, and it is very durable. I will agree.
Yeah. Well, what it's really popular for is if you have kitchen cabinets or furniture that you want it to look old and distressed, so you're going to sand down, like you put a base coat on there of one color and then go over with another color, and then you sand the edges so you get that little bleed through effect. It's a little bit creative, but that's what it's famous for, because you can build multiple layers of color, sand it back, and then the edges look like they've got 100 years of wear on them, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I like it. It's kind of a fun product to use. I haven't used it in a couple of years, but it's you get the powdered version, which is what you want, not the stuff in the can, So
I had to make some chairs a long time ago that were going to have that distressed look with the milk paint. And what I found, obviously online, was that you went and got some of the glue you used to have in grade school, the white glue,
yeah.
and you put that on the edges so you sanded it, you put that on the edges, you let it dry a little bit, and then you paint it. And then then all you gotta do is take your finger and it'll roll right off. It's because it's the paste, not the glue, that white paste you use for paper. And
Elmer's glue type of thing?
Elmer's glue, yeah, that's it, yeah. And then you just scuff it a bit and then put your cover coat, put your clear on top of it,
Yeah. Like I said, the guys who do Windsor chairs are really use a lot of that.
Oh, yeah.
Windsor chairs have always got that black and then a rust color and then a top coat and then another color, and then they sand it all back and it looks like a 200-year-old chair,
Now, Jay, you say it's powder. What's the solvent?
I'm sorry?
You say it comes as a powder. What's the solvent?
It's water. You mix it with water.
Water. Okay.
Yeah, because it literally is a lye. It's like concrete is what it is. It's a lye. It's like cement that you mix with water. The casein from the milk is the protein that binds it all together. But once you mix that water, you've initiated a chemical reaction with the water, and it's like mortar. It'll set up just as hard, and so you just mix it, and then obviously you only mix as much as you're going to use, and the rest of it is shelf stable. But that is genuine milk paint, because you got proteins from the milk, and then the lye, which is what the concrete is made out of lye, and the pigments. It's really fundamentally a simple product, And of course, it goes back. It was originally formulated for painting barns and things like that. You had a ready source of cooked lime. You had milk proteins and iron oxide, which is why barns are red. And there you go. That's why barns are red, painted with milk paint.
So I have a finish that's a little different than the type of thing that other people are talking about. I made a bunch of Christmas presents, bottle openers, you buy the threaded insert and the silver end to these things. And the finish for this, I struggled with. By the way, you can see my lack of turning skill. They're not all the same, but no one would ever know that. But the finish I put on this was cryoacetate glue. And it actually works quite well, and you get a very nice, extremely hard finish. In this case, I put about 5 coats on. I put a little bit of linseed oil along with the cryoacetate on a rag, and then while the machine's lathes turning, you just rub it on. Then you go away for about 20 minutes, and it firms up. You just put another coat on, so you can put 5 coats on in an hour with no trouble. Works really well. It wasn't something I would have thought of just using cryoacetate glue. The only thing I would say is wear goggles. You can tell the fumes in your eyes pretty rapidly doing this. So I don't think it was particularly safe product to use in that sense. I think you ought to use a respirator and goggles when you use it.
Yeah, definitely use a mask because the vapors might get your lungs as well. The other thing, Brant, I noticed doing that is it heats up quite a bit in your hand. If you're holding it, your fingertips under the spot where the glue is.
Yeah, I sort of managed to sort of hold the either end of the cloth so that it wasn't putting on directly. But the idea is you do want to get some pressure on it because it's the pressure that tends to buff it in.
Yeah.
It's not anything I do for something large. This is something, we're doing something really small, and especially on a lathe or something like that. It's a really good product. Again, very specific finishing situation.
Nobody's going to mention shellac.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask about. Because I've done a couple small projects and used shellac, multiple coats.
I love it.
They're very easy to put on. You can put 5-6 coats on in a day. But one was for a stool, and another one was a small box. What does everyone think about shellac?
I love shellac, actually.
I love it. I use it all the time. The only thing you got to be really careful about is it ages and then it does not dry. And so it's not worth, using old shellac. Just throw the damn.
You know what I do is we have a seal meal. You're familiar with the vacuum sealing things? I'll buy a pound of shellac, break it up into like 4-ounce bags and vacuum seal it, and that keeps it fresh. So, because I never use more than 3 or 4 ounces at a
Until
time.
you mix it, I don't think it's a problem. I don't think that the flakes actually age. Just once that you mix it, then
Oh,
you.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. But the flakes do age too, you
They
know?
I haven't had that problem. I've had them for a long time and they've been fine.
David's shaking his head over there. Yeah, but
I-
the nice thing about shellac is you can tint all manner of trans tint in that stuff, you know? And I did a couple of cabinets a couple of years ago that I shot with the shellac with a tint in it. And it, you know, went around and then finished it on top of that with something else. And then you can sand it back. It's just a fabulous product, you know. And of course,
I had
it's
some
just,
shellac flakes I bought, and they ended up towards the back of a shelf. I've kind of forgot all about them. And so, oh, I got some more flakes, and yeah, it didn't look good. Yeah, I mean, they were like clumpy, and you know, they were no longer nice flakes. So
they'll tell you on the website, what's the guy that sells all the shellac again?
I go to shellac.org, I think.
Shellac.net or org, yeah. But
Net,
what they
yeah,
tell you
net,
is
yeah.
that what happens is that it won't turn into a solid. It'll stay gummy, you
Right.
know, and
That's the
as
problem.
it gets old. So
What's the solvent in shellac or used to it?
alcohol, ethyl alcohol, not the best is to use ethyl alcohol, not denatured alcohol. And you can get ethyl alcohol 98% or something like that, and they use it for window cleaning. You can buy it at Lowe's. You pay a couple of very little bit more for it, but I always get the 100% ethyl alcohol. It's what you want. So
I get mine at Sherwin-Williams. Of course, they're only like a couple blocks from me, but you know, if it's a Sherwin-Williams, they'll have it.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
It's got to be that high percentage. Yada,
It's
yada,
like
yada.
98% or something like that, whatever it is. Yeah.
I find that shellac is really good. What I tend to do with a lot of my finishes is put shellac on first as a seal coat.
Right.
And then everything goes over it, because everything goes on top of shellac. It
Yeah.
doesn't have a compatibility problem with everything, with anything. So that's my first coat on it, and sand that down, just scuff it, and then go from there.
Oh, Everclear. Where did you get that? That's
I got it at the
illegal.
liquor store.
That's like, well,
Yeah.
what proof? That's probably 90 proof,
Uh,
80 proof, I mean.
It is 75.5% alcohol by volume,
Oh, it's 100.
151.
Do you know Everclear comes in like 180 proof, but you can't buy it in the US.
Actually, you can.
Okay.
It depends upon what state you're in.
Okay, all right. Oh, there you go. Yeah. You can't.
I've got a bottle of 180 proof Everclear.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I don't use shellac a lot, and I do mix it with flakes.
Yeah.
So I use this, and it seems to last a little longer.
Oh, look at this. Grain out. There you go. Everclear.
Yep. So the other thing is that my wife is a painter, and one of the things that she does is she uses one of those little what's those little spray, the little spray.
Airbrush.
It's an airbrush.
Yeah.
Well, to clean that out, she uses the Everclear because it doesn't, the other things tend to eat away at that orifice in there. And the Everclear will clean it out very quickly. So we always have a little bit of this in the house, but neither one of us drink, to be honest with you. So it does last.
You wouldn't want to drink that anyways. You know, it's too hot, I can tell you.
Well, in the day.
Yeah, in the day I did that too.
There's a reason my bottle's only down so low. I put that away a long time ago. It's just there for show now.
Actually, I bought my Everclear to do extracts of mint and that sort of thing.
Yeah, actually, I've used it that way before with raspberries or cranberries or something like that for making a liqueur, because it extracts the flavors out of fruit.
Oh,
Now, down in North Carolina, you might have other options there, Jay.
Yeah, bear oil, you know, yeah.
This bathtub.
So on the shellac note, and I completely agree that shellac is just a wonderful product. I mean, it's easy, it's beautiful, it's universal, it sticks to everything. One thing to be a little bit careful with shellac of is, you can spray water-based poly. When I say poly, any of the million of different versions of waterborne acrylic, right? You could spray it over shellac. But shellac is soft and doesn't really dry hard. It dries pretty soft. And there are, as waterborne polys get better and better, there is a whole thing that's going on with crazing. So that if you spray the shellac too heavy as the base coat and then spray a waterborne poly over it, what can happen is as the waterborne layer coalesces and dries, it's so strong and so aggressive that it crazes. It'll cause an alligator skin by ripping the shellac, away in little patches. And this is a real thing. I actually had this happen on a walnut kitchen job that I did, where I tinted the walnut kitchen with a tinted shellac, and it looked gorgeous. And then I sprayed a high performance waterborne over it, and I crazed almost all of it and had to strip it all back. And that started the process of researching this. And it turns out it wasn't just, the top coat I used. It's a pretty common thing. So all I would say is if you use shellac as like a base coat or a toner coat, just go light. Because if you really build on it, which is kind of that was my thinking, was just, build up the layers as I wanted. You can really mess up your final top coat if you go over it with something else. So just be aware.
does that get into what they call 1 pound or 2 pound or 3 pound cut? Is that what you're referring to, Dave?
Well, yeah, in a way. I mean, so, the cut of the shellac is the amount of shellac by weight and volume. I think it's volume.
Gallon, it's 1 pound per gallon.
Yeah, 1 pound per gallon, right? So, if you're going to use the shellac as a sealer or toner, I'd probably mix a pretty light cut. I'd mix like a 1 pound cut, right? Or less. So you don't have a lot of build.
What you buy is 2 pound cut, I'm pretty sure. The
That's
rate
right.
and bullseye is 2 pound.
Yeah. So you can cut that with
I like to mix my shellac up in like a 1 pound because it's more forgiving. When you're putting a tint on it, you can multi-layer because the alcohol flashes off. You see exactly how much you want. You want a little bit more, like you're spraying it, and it's a little bit more forgiving versus a 3 pound cut or something like that. You would use a 3 pound cut if you're trying to seal resins or like knot holes or something like that. That's a different animal. Like you're going to paint versus put a clear finish on it.
Well, if we're going to talk about shellac, can we then move into a French polish?
We've been trying to get somebody to demonstrate French polishing for years, and we haven't been able to do it.
Because that's basically what they're using, shellac and a bit of oil to build.
Yeah, that's a whole skill set. They use that on pianos, and particularly pianos, for that glossy black finish on a Steinway, but I've never tried it. I've investigated it. I wish we could get somebody who knew how to do it. I've always wanted to find out how to do that.
My problem with shellac as a finish in itself is that it's completely not water resistant, right? Like if you set a wet cup down on a piece of furniture that's shellacked, you're going to get a witness mark. Like the shellac will not resist the water at all.
Oh yeah.
And that's a problem. So I don't know. I mean, shellac is amazing, but I think it's amazing as a sealer and toner. And for that furniture, or those pieces, who cares if it's water resistant? But, don't know.
Well, you know, back in the 19th century, when we didn't have all modern chemistry, shellac was kind of a go-to product, which is why they invented the coaster.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll tell you what will leave a really big witness mark is alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, if you spill a drink on alcohol, on the shellac, that alcohol in the drink will, you know, soften the finish. So.
Yeah. You know, and if we're talking about favorite finishes, I have to say that I think, man, Armor Seal is hard to beat. It is a wonderful product. I mean, I'm using a lot of ODs, but I still use a ton of Armor Seal. I buy it by the gallon. It's a wiping urethane, right? It's very similar to polyurethanes that you buy. The formulation has not changed in 100 years. They've been making the same stuff for a long time. There's variations of it. Waterlock's original is a different, I think it's an alkyd resin instead of a urethane. But same kind of thing. These wiping oil-based urethanes, man, they are versatile. They're simple to use. They're hard as hell when they cure. And they just leave a spectacular finish. I think if I were stranded on a desert island and had to bring one finish, I think it'd be Armor Seal.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I've used a lot of Waterlocks too, though, but in different applications, you know.
Nothing is more beautiful than Waterlocks of mahogany.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But look how dark
it was originally a marine finish, you know.
Yeah. And this stuff, but look how dark it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's super dark, but it dries rock hard. I mean, you let Waterlocks cure and it's like, it changes the hardness of the material you're putting it on dramatically by it cross-linking and curing.
Yeah.
And Armor Seal is not that different. I don't know. I just think it's a fantastic product.
How many coats do you put on?
I put on 4 typically.
Yeah. I'm in the middle of finishing a mahogany screen door right now that my intention is 4 coats, sanding with 220 to 320 in between coats.
Yeah.
Just scuff it, just to knock off the little nibs, you know. And the last coat was 600, like a paper bag, like a brown paper bag kind of effect, you know, 600 grit, and you end up with a really nice finish.
You know, and the thing about Armor Seal is you can move quickly, right? You can do very big surfaces and move very quickly and end up with a wonderful, wonderful finish. The downside is it dries slowly.
Yeah.
Right? Like each coat is, you know, it's like a day per coat, depending on the weather. If the weather's favorable, it flashes off pretty quick.
Yeah.
But, you know, but other than that, I don't know. If you look at all the variables, the price, ease of use, quality of finish, durability, it's right up there, right? That's a good mix. And there's
I'll give you an observation about my use with Armor Seal, and that is that the very first coat soaks in immediately, flashes off, you know, but as you get successive coats, and I have a theory about this, which is probably not accurate, but because you've got a polymer on the surface, every time you wipe on a new coat, it grabs those molecules from the fresh coat, which is why you can put a coat on and then wipe off the excess.
Yeah.
Because the first coat has grabbed all the molecules that it can and is leaving on the surface the solvents and the excess finish. You wipe it off, and my feeling is that every successive coat gets easier and easier.
Yes.
Because it's grabbing those molecules. You wipe it on, wipe it off, and it practically is dry before you're done, you know. I mean,
So-
wait a day between coats, you know.
Jay, for that first coat, which is soaking in the wood, for that first coat, I like to use Seal-A-Cell.
Yeah.
Because the Seal-A-Cell it has oil in it and it has no flatteners, right? So it still has the polymer in it and it soaks into the wood and polymerizes in the wood, leaving, as you said, a nice base for the Armor Seal to build as a film finish.
Yeah.
Man, the combination of those two They're readily available. They're easy to get. They're not expensive. And it's next to impossible to screw up.
You know, I've done a whole lot of green and green style furniture. And what I've done with that is you take the mahogany, sand it to whatever you're going to finish it at. You oxidize the surface with the potassium dichloride or dichromate, which turns it orange, believe it or not. But then I always use Silocell, which I mix the pigments of green, ochre, burnt umber, and white titanium. There's a mix, there's a formula for those. You can get it online. You mix that in with a Silocell, flood, which is green, by the way, when you're done. You got this green on top of an orange wood. You flood it on there, immediately wipe it off, and you end up with this fabulously rich mahogany tone, over which you then finish with armor seal, you know, and you end up with something that looks unbelievable. It's got, because of all those pigments from the green, yellow, white, and brown oil colors is what you're using, oil paint in there. And you end up with this lustrous finish. I mean, I think it's worth the effort as far as I'm concerned, you know, and it is effort, but it's one of those things. You're building a very expensive, high-end labor piece of furniture. You may as well do it right, you know? So I've had really good success with that formula, and it's available online, you know, or in that Daryl Pert book, you know.
Yeah.
So with the armor seal, can you wait days between coats? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
life happens? or-
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a urethane, right? So
Right.
you need to knock down the coat to give it teeth for the
Okay.
subsequent coat. It's a pure urethane. So it could be as hard as you want it to be, knock it down and throw another coat on.
Sweet.
It's a wonderful product. Yeah.
When I was in a woodworking group in Milwaukee, we used to have the general finishes guys visit every couple of years, and they always said do Silocell first and then armor seal. And they used to leave a whole bunch of free samples, including the new stuff that was in development. So it was.
Do you guys remember David Marks and the TV show he had, Woodworks? Anybody ever see David Marks?
Oh,
Yeah.
God, that rings a bell.
He went off the air maybe 10 years ago, but he a really high-end furniture maker in California. And David Marks finished everything he did with what he called tongue oil. And he had this little jar that is Silocell.
Yeah.
That's what he used. And Silocell is a blended oil poly, you know, a blended oil urethane, no flatteners. You can use Silocell on its own and build it as and it's spectacular. I mean, it's a wonderful finish. But yeah, the general finishes guys, they really have it down. I mean, I see them every time I go to IWF. And like I said, they haven't touched that formula in many decades. I think it might be 100 years old. It just hasn't changed.
I don't think they're that old from the sounds of them. I mean,
I think it's pretty old. Like it was.
I think it's like post World War II from the.
You think so? You think it's? I guess if it's a urethane, it probably is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, but I mean the company itself.
I'm a big fan of General Finishes.
Yeah, they make good stuff.
My garage door is mahogany actually, and as soon as they put it on the house, I'm going to finish that with the outdoor oil, which is it's got the UV resistant in it. But that'll be and the reason I'm using that is because I'm a big believer in General Finishes, but also it's repairable.
Yeah.
That if something comes along, scratches it, dents it, whatever, I can sand it back and refinish it. You know, that's the other really important thing about these finishes is how, because you know they all get dented, they get scratched, something happens to them, how do you repair them, you know? And I don't want something that I'm going to have to, or that'll be so noticeable. Now I can sand it back with 320, put a couple more coats on it, sand it, you'll never see it, you know? And things get dented, you know?
Yeah, I had an early sample of that stuff because when they were at one of these meetings, I told them that in the back of the garage of the house we bought, the house was over like 100 years old. In the back of the garage was squirreled away an old oak porch swing. And it had some failed finish. And he said, just, sand it down and put this on. He gave me it as a sample.
Yeah.
And it worked real well.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, we have a bedroom suite that is finished cherry commercial pieces of furniture. And my wife spilled acetone on it, fingernail polish remover, on one of the side tables, and really messed up the finish on it. And I was able to restore it with this stuff. And this worked really well. You can't even tell the difference between this and the original piece.
And that product you're holding is very similar to an Armor Seal, right? It's very similar. I mean, it's a wiping poly, right?
Yeah, and it's an organic solvent-based poly.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, they're just so easy too, right? Like you have to work so hard to mess up with that stuff.
Right.
You know?
Well, it does dry fast, so if you're slow with it, then you're going to end up with rub marks in it.
I use a staining pad, like a staining pad soaked in mineral spirits, and then I leave it in the can of mineral spirits for the next coat. And I find I can move quickly with the staining pad because it's big and it's loaded up with finish, right? So you can kind of, so I'll do kitchens with it, or but yeah, you're right. You don't want to streak over it as it's flashing off, right? You want to kind of get it on and move on,
Yeah.
And again, Sutherland Wells makes really high-end versions of these same products. Like Sutherland Wells has a Seal-A-Cell, if you will, which is, their version of an oil urethane that's spectacular, but it's, $35 a quart kind of thing. Whereas, General Finishes might be 20, but so what, right? Again, depending on what you're doing. Yeah.
My feeling is if you're finishing a chair, a bookcase, the cost of the finish is minimal relative to all the rest of the effort,
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question here? We've been talking about a couple of things, and Dave, you talked about toxicity.
Yeah.
On a couple of things. Can we just talk about what kind of respirator you guys would recommend? I'm not going to spray any finishes. I'm going to either wipe them or brush them or something. But for those that do, can you talk about what we should be wearing?
I mean, I use a 3M charcoal respirator.
Okay. NIOSH,
Yeah. But I'll tell you, so with Odie's oil, I don't use anything. Nothing. I mean, it's a citrus-based solvent. I don't even think about it, right?
Yeah.
They say you can apply it with your fingers, right? They don't care. With Armor Seal, honestly, most days what I do is I turn on the exhaust fan so I have negative pressure in my shop, and I don't put on a respirator. I probably should, and I don't, right? When I spray, which is less and less frequent, you better believe I wear a respirator because that's a whole different game. Waterborne or solvent-borne, it doesn't matter. If you're atomizing, plastic, I don't want to inhale that stuff. And I just wear a 3M charcoal respirator.
I've been seriously thinking about constructing a paint booth to do it, and then having that mechanically vented outside.
It's all about negative pressure, right? That when you look at like $1 million spray booths, they figured out a way to get amazing negative pressure without currents, right? So that the finish isn't doing weird things as it leaves the gun, but yet it's leaving the space, right? It's all about negative pressure.
So on the type of respirators, you should also, like, if you're like me, you never replace the cartridges in your respirator. I didn't realize it was a problem. Like, I would occasionally take them out and shake them out. I would knock out like a bunch of drywall dust or something. But when I started spraying the General Finishes High Performance, I'll get this awful headache afterwards. And then I thought, I bet I need to replace those filters. And sure enough, I replaced them, and $20 later, I didn't have headaches anymore. So
3M does sell a version that has an indicator, but I've found them really hard to get. So I do what my father, the chemical engineer, did with his, which is to leave them in Ziploc bags all the time.
Yeah.
So I use P100s, which are the big pink ones.
Yep.
And they offer a tiny bit of not just particulate, but, you know, noxious fumes. But I don't do that, the P100s, when I'm doing anything that I'm afraid of. I switch the cartridges and take them out of their Ziploc bags. And in the Ziploc bags, they do last longer. But like you, I'm worried that I'm using them too long. So I'm tempted by the indicator ones, but I don't know where to buy them.
That's cool.
Maybe with the pandemic getting a little bit farther along, they'll be possible. But like in the beginning, I can remember my wife was like spraying some sort of nasty stuff onto cabinets, and I was like calling the welding supplier, you know, anybody I thought wouldn't have been run through, and there weren't any masks of any type because they wouldn't help you at all with COVID, but that didn't matter. People would buy them anyway. But Ziploc bags is the real advice. Just seal them up when you're not using them.
That's a great tip. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So Dave, what are you spraying now? I know you got that very fancy spray setup. It seems like you're moving away from spray.
Yeah, I really am not. I'm really not using it much, Jay. I mean, you know, there's I don't know. I mean, the environmentalist in me thinks that we have to really think harder about what we're doing with spray finishes. I mean, you know, one of my go-to finishes was a water-based acrylic, right? It was called Sailorlac, great finish, water-based acrylic, and it certainly didn't have a bunch of bad solvents in it, but you know, it's liquid plastic, right? And I would atomize it with my amazing Kremlin, you know, sprayer, and I'd end up with these gorgeous finishes, but I'm on the river and my exhaust fan would be running. And, you know, the atomized plastic cloud is getting blown outside and landing either in the water or on the grass. And, you know, it's never going away, right? Like an atomized urethane dust. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this can't be good. This can't be the right approach to things. So I don't know. I just stopped doing it. And I know there's guys that swear by, you know, 2-part. I know a lot of these guys who just think, you know, if you're not spraying, you know, an MEK based 2-part catalyzing, and yeah, the shit's amazing, right? It's amazing. And it's horrific for the human beings involved and for every bit of wildlife and plant life that comes in contact with it. And how do you clean up, right? I mean, you need solvents to clean up. You need to dispose of it once you do. What are they doing? Dumping it down the drain? Because if you're doing it properly, it's expensive to clean up. So I don't know. I think we have to really rethink this stuff. And, you know, personally, I've landed on hard wax oils or wiping varnishes with great success, you know?
When we're all dead and gone, we're gonna have these amazingly smooth, beautifully finished pieces that nobody can see.
I think that it's gonna get banned. I do. I think it's gonna get banned. I mean, I think as we evolve, I think that like California is already kind of leading this charge. But this idea of spraying solvents all day, every day in enormous venting, it's not going to be sustainable. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't want the, you know, the green liberal in me to come out, but man, I just don't see it, you know? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, to touch on your point there, Dave, you know that Chrysler built a new plant down in Detroit, and the neighbors are just up in arms because the paint line is making those people sick. And, you know, Chrysler said, we'll do whatever it takes to get there. And they spent $1 billion there and they're not backing off. And they're trying to make it go away, but those people are getting sick.
You know,
I guess what I heard was that they're not getting sick. There's an odor that is not pleasant, but the medical side of it is not correct.
Okay, all right.
you know, even with waterborne, right? Like, I mean, the waterborne technology now is amazing. It's gotten so good. I mean, you look at like some of these products, Renner makes an amazing waterborne, clear and pick. They're terrific, but it's still microplastics. You still got to clean up, right? You still got to dispose of it. It still has a solvent. It's just suspended in water instead of in acetone or whatever there's like, it's still not good, you know? But then again, if you run a large cabinet shop and you got to pump out, the only way to get 3 coats a day on is to use solvent and spray like mad. It's a speed issue, right? And I don't know. I mean, I guess we don't have a great answer yet, but it just doesn't feel right to me. I don't know.
Well, water-based was an answer to the high solvent, the high VOCs of the solvent-based finishes. If you go to the General Finishes website, the very first thing you see is all about their new line of water-based formulas, you know?
And they're great, man.
It's
They're
a step
great.
in the right direction, you know?
It is. It is.
At least you're getting the VOCs out, even though you're not getting the rest out.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, you mentioned Odie's oil was the citrus-based one. Do you think there's going to be more like that coming out then in this, with this mindset?
You know, it's funny. I've asked General Finishes. I know a few of them, and I've seen them at IWF, and I go and talk to them for a while. And actually, they've used a couple of my pieces in some of their marketing material. So I've got kind of a line to one of the marketing folks there, and I asked them, like, why don't they come out with a hard wax oil? Like, I mean, Rubio's killing it. Osmo is killing it, right? Odie's has a heck of a following. Like, there's a market for hard wax oils, especially with their marketing capability. And so far, the answer has been no. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because they do polymerizing film finishes for the most part. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know.
Machinery that they have.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they know, right? That's what they're set up to do. And I have no idea how hard it is to source these raw materials and make these products, but I gotta believe it's difficult. I mean, Odie's is really expensive. And I think part of it is the raw materials are really expensive, you know? I don't know.
I guess I've heard somewhere that in Europe, the hard wax is like the predominant finish.
Oh, especially for floors. That's like their primary go-to for floors in Europe, and it's been for decades. I mean, it came to the United States from Germany and Switzerland, where they used it for flooring. That was their, yeah. So it's not new technology at all. I mean, I think Rubio is Belgium, and I think Osmo is German, and they're the two big dogs, you know? Yeah.
I'm gonna have to sign off.
Yeah.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. So.
Same.
All right.
Great evening, guys.
As an open offer, if anybody in the club wants to try Odie's and you don't want to buy a $50 jar, I'll give you some. I got tons of it, and
It only takes a little bit.
takes a little bit. So feel free to reach out, or Armor Seal for that matter.
Or a tailspin for your next project.
Yeah, there you go. All right, guys, that was fun.
All right, everybody.
Good.
Thank you.
Informative. Thank you.
All right, have a good one. Take it easy.
Hi, everyone. Have a good one.